I would say a local government. What?
You don't think he wants... Well, I was going to say my friend sent me an article about his town. So I don't know what you're talking about.
Your friend. Go ahead.
What are you talking about?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Wow.
Now. Go ahead.
Okay. So...
Does it have anything to do with drones?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Well, unmanned aerial vehicles or unmanned aircraft or whatever the heck it is. Right. So
also known as drones, colloquially.
Yeah. So there's these are popping up all over the place. Is a battle of can a local municipality regulate the use of unmanned aircraft, drones, remote control helicopters, whatever
for private use.
For sure. Yeah.
Because there are commercial ones, then they are regulated by the FAA.
So the question would still be can a local, because
probably more so for commercial,
because the
private.
proposed ordinance I saw does absolutely regulate commercial use,
right, and private use.
Yes,
and
it outright bans commercial use.
Yeah,
because the one clause says it says all use will be for recreational purposes only.
But there was a caveat in there that said unless they meet certain federal certification for commercial work. There was something in there about that.
Well, if you're authorized by the FAA.
Yeah,
pretty much
like
what it said.
Yeah. So you could do it. So Amazon could deliver.
Potentially, yeah, if they're authorized by the FAA.
So I'm sure they are.
Also, as they like to do, the city can go ahead and do it because we're worried about safety, right? Because drones are dangerous unless the government is operating them.
Right.
And then it's safe.
Right. So if I get this right, what they want to do basically is they don't ban drones or unmanned aircraft. They just make it almost impossible to fly them anywhere. So there's a couple parts that I didn't like, and I think they're wrong. And that is, they said you cannot take photographs of people or property without permission.
Right.
Which is wrong.
Yeah.
Because if you're out in public, you have no expectation of privacy.
Arguably violating the First Amendment, right? Because what it does is it bans photojournalism with a drone. Right. And I'm pretty convinced that photojournalism is protected by the First Amendment.
Even if it's by a private individual. Now, it doesn't have to be a recognized news agency, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
They also, and this is what I'm going to bring up, and I added it to the argument, and that is it says you cannot fly an unmanned aircraft within 500 feet of a school, an accident scene, a fire scene, stuff like that.
Yep.
Or crowds. What's any crowd?
Or
no stadiums,
or
no groups,
public gathering space,
public gatherings,
which is defined as anywhere.
Right.
Right. I mean, things such as parade routes, street festivals.
I have 2 points. Here's
aerial fields.
Here's two things. 500 feet. Do they mean vertical or horizontal? And
it's hilarious that you did that wrong.
And it's almost unenforceable because they can't really measure it.
Right.
Well, they could do a rangefinder, but if you keep moving your drone around, it's going to be hard to get a signal.
You could take a photograph, and if you measured something in the photograph,
it'd be challengeable.
For sure. But
here's my point. So could I be right on top of the police officer and just keep my drone 500 feet in the air?
Well, you can't because the other clause says you will not fly it directly above anybody.
Okay, off to the side of that person? Now, the other thing is, or does it mean that I have to be 500 feet away physically, and my drone could be right on top of the accident scene,
right,
at any elevation?
Yeah.
So that's a little ambiguous, right? So it's vague. So it's unconstitutional due to vagueness.
Also,
there was one other thing, and I can't remember that they were trying to ban too. But what constitutes a gathering?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other thing is this applies to all unmanned aircraft, right? Which they define as anything that can be controlled remotely and is not tethered. Pretty much is how they.
Yeah.
It does in fact apply to my $20 helicopter that won't go any higher than my house.
Right.
Right. it applies to that. All of the people that are getting their children little helicopters that they want them to fly around the backyard for Christmas.
They could fly in their own yard.
They could fly in their own yard if they do not have a camera on it.
Oh, that's the other
Because
issue,
if you have a camera on it, you're going to get video or photographs of your neighbor's house, which is banned under the proposed ordinance. Now, here's the thing. It is absolutely legal to take pictures of anybody in public unless they have some expectation of privacy. So if they're in a public bathroom, you can't, right? You can take pictures of private property that you don't own from anywhere that you can legally see it.
Paparazzis will take a ladder and they'll put it on the public sidewalk and shoot over a fence.
Right. You cannot use a telephoto lens to spy into somebody's bathroom from public land, right? But you can, with your hands, you can a handheld camera.
You can shoot into people's houses from the street.
You can, yes. Yep.
If you don't have curtains drawn and stuff.
But you're getting into a risky area if if you're zooming in to somebody in the shower. Yeah. Gray area.
Or sitting on the toilet.
Absolutely. But to outright prohibit taking pictures of any property that you don't own
from an unmanned aircraft it's illegal. I don't
has
think
to be illegal. Not to mention the federal statute is very clear where it says that the United States government has complete sovereignty, complete rule over airspace.
It's basically preempted. Yeah, now I will say that there was a U.S. Supreme Court decision from 1946, and it was out west somewhere, and it was a chicken farmer that was close to a military training base, I guess, and they used to fly their jets close over his farm and scare his chickens. And he sued, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court. And the judges there actually ruled that there used to be the common law was that you owned everything above your property and everything below your property to the center of the earth and to the heavens, it actually said. So that you controlled all the airspace straight up and all the way down. Mineral rights and,
clouds,
the rain and water and stuff that came out of the sky. Yep. The Supreme Court said, well, not so much. That high-flying aircraft isn't a nuisance, doesn't inhibit you in any way. If it's flying up high, they can do that. They said that you do own a certain part of the airspace above your house up to a reasonable level. Otherwise, you couldn't build buildings. You couldn't grow trees.
Yeah, right.
So my suggestion would be to the township that if they wanted to try to ban drone flights over private property, they could work on a height. They could say it can't be lower than the trees.
But there is no clear case law there.
There's no case law because they didn't say how high it was.
Didn't say how high at all.
But they put it out there.
Yeah.
That's some part of that is controlled by the person.
But that's also, it still was pretty specific to private property.
Right.
You're still going to have an issue trying to regulate that space on public property.
Through public property and actually having it regulated, because you could say the state doesn't have any sovereignty over my airspace, over my house.
Well, I think that's clear.
So you can't.
Okay, you were saying that you're thinking that the city could try.
I'm saying that would be a more reasonable approach based on that thing.
No,
I don't think it's
fair.
But
no way, it isn't. Not on. I thought you were saying. I think they could only try to make that argument on city property,
and I don't.
They absolutely can't regulate my airspace on my property.
Well. Then they really can't do what they're trying to do.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear to me.
And what really made this person who sent this to us mad was that this was putting the horse before the cart, because the reason for this is for the protection of health and safety of the residents of the town.
Yep.
And when there's of the thousands of hours and the millions of drones out there, been very few accidents.
Right.
And only a couple people were injured. Most of them, they just crashed into a crowd and nobody was really injured or whatever. Or they flew over the White House, or they flew in an airspace. Well, the feds already control that.
Right.
So it's like, they're trying to create this law when there's been no harm shown.
And if you do harass somebody with a drone or otherwise, or hit somebody with your drone, you're liable for there's laws.
There's civil law and there's nuisance laws.
Yep. We're almost out of time, but I will say I heard, I think many local governments, this city does seem to like to restrict things to avoid potential problems.
And that's no way to govern.
It is not. All right. Okay. We're out of time. See you next week.
Bye-bye.